Hey folks, like a lot of you, I do a lot of my used parts hunting online, or more particular, eBay. And while the convenience of getting something delivered to your door within a few days is great and hassle-free, especially when you've got other work and family commitments, and while there are undoubtedly bargains to be had on it, it's not the be-all and end-all of used component hunting. The case in point here being this Lenovo Edge 72 desktop. This is a tidy little tower which I picked up fairly locally from an advert in the paper. The desktop was listed at £65 and featured 4GB of DDR3, a 500GB hard drive, and an Ivy Bridge Core i3-3220, as well as a fresh install of Windows 10. The seller had bought the system last year as a basic desktop and recently wanted to turn it into a basic gaming PC. After buying a used Geforce graphics card online, he said it just was not compatible with the system and he just wanted to sell up everything and move on to something new. Fair enough, so I called him up with an offer of £50 for that desktop and said I could pick it up that evening, which he kindly accepted. When I arrived, the PC was set up and working well, but before I left I couldn't help ask what he did with the graphics card. When he told me it was just sitting there gathering dust, while pointing to a rather beefy looking Asus card, I offered to take it off his hands and give him a total of £60 for the whole lot, figuring that even if the card was indeed blown like he thought it was, then the cooler alone would probably fetch a few quid on eBay and cover that costs. Happy buyer, happy seller. When I got home and cracked open the old desktop, I was met with a pretty tidy little setup. There's no frills here, a Lenovo motherboard with the quoted 4GB of RAM only taking up one of the two DIMM slots. Immediately though, I could see a problem, and one that immediately flagged up the reason that he described the graphics card as not being compatible. First off, the power supply, as you can plainly see, is, well, it's tiny. And with good reason. While Dell and HP desktops generally come with around 230 to 280 watts, and can often handle lower end cards like an RX 560 or GTX 1050 out of the box, it was not going to be the case with this Lenovo. The power supply could provide a maximum power, not constant, maximum of 180 watts. There were no additional Molex connectors and certainly no PCIe power connectors. It's a simple PSU built for one job with no option of expandability. Any other graphics card other than a very basic display adapter, let alone this Asus GPU with a 6+8 PCIe power connector, would struggle in this build to receive enough power, let alone fit in it. And that was point number 2. Generally in pre-builds there's a lot of excess structural members within a case. This is just to simply reduce the chance of anything being damaged during shipping, and as you can see here, the hard drives are mounted to the side and occupy space where a larger graphics card like this would generally sit. But back to the PSU. One great thing about this Lenovo Edge is while it has got a proprietary motherboard, the PSU is a pretty standard affair, with a normal 24-pin power connector and a 4-pin CPU connector, which is great and so much less of a headache than when dealing with Dell or HP desktops with their proprietary, modder unfriendly configurations. Thankfully, decent low-cost PSUs are really easy to pick up these days, and something like this EVGA 500W 80+ white PSU is only going to set you back around £35 to £40 here in the UK, or around $40 to $50 in the States. So let's clean up this desktop, change out the thermal paste on the CPU, and install this new PSU, and see where this leaves us. Even if this GPU is a dud, £60 is a great building block for a future budget build. Talking of the GPU, I've actually not a clue what it is at the stage of writing this script. It looks fairly clean, and since the seller was keen to snap my hand off for £10, I'm guessing that it's maybe something like a GTX 570 or something of that ilk, since they came with a DirectCU 2 cooler. But with no labelling here, we're going to have to wait until we can put it into the system before it becomes clear what we actually have. With the new PSU installed and everything cleaned up, the desktop is looking a good bit more respectable now. But what about that GPU? Well, the PSU here was not the only hurdle like I've mentioned. The larger GPU was simply too big to fit in the chassis. I guess this is what you would call MacGyver time. And we're going to have to trim off some of the excess fat from this chassis. Not much is required to get the GPU in, and using a smaller card like my GTX 1050 Ti would remove the need to do this, but in the interest of seeing what I've actually bought, and to see if it is actually working, we'll just do a little nip and tuck to get it in. And through the magic of video editing, voila! One refurbished 50 quid Ivy Bridge desktop and a £10 mystery GPU. Eventually we do land on the desktop, and the first thing I did was set everything to auto update and queued up a download of all the tools that I would normally use and left it running for a few hours, before finally coming back and getting a chance to fire up GPU Z. So what would it be? A Fermi card? Maybe even a Kepler? Would it turn out to be a brick once drivers were installed? Well, what we got for the huge sum of 10 of the finest Great British pounds was a GTX 770-2GB. That's right, the performance per dollar king from the Kepler lineup, and a card that I already bought in its MSI guise last year. Even before refurbishment, temps are pretty cool thanks to that direct CU2 cooler, and there's no artifacts. And while I would like to end the video here, I can't leave you guys hanging, so jumping into 3D Mark Firestrike for a quick benchmark. And as a reminder, this is a 4GB of DDR3 system with a Core i3-3220. And the card worked absolutely flawlessly, barely breaking a sweat and returning an overall score, which was actually better than when I used the 280X and the G3258 last year. So £60 folks, and a new £35 PSU, a little bit of elbow grease, and we've got basically a complete system. And I thought snagging that 980 Ti on the cheap was a bargain. That's a complete system, OS and all, for under £100. And to be honest, you can't get much more of a bargain than that. So the next step is to whip out that GTX 770, strip it back and clean it up, so stay tuned for more on this little setup. I guess you could call it the budget gaming rig. And we'll be able to see how the older Ivy Bridge i3 coupled with a 770 handles some of the latest titles. If you enjoyed this little gem of a find, then let me know down below and use those thumbs, share, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Now I've got to get a cleaning with this old Kepler card, so as always, take care, and I'll see you all in the comment section down below, and in the next video.